Okay, you could start whenever.
Welcome back to another episode of the Born Again Again podcast. I'm Katie.
And I'm Joe.
So this week, we started listening to a podcast from some YouTubers that we really liked called Rhett and Link, and they do the Good Mythical Morning show.
And their Ear Biscuits podcast.
Yeah, so we were listening to their Ear Biscuits podcast. We found out through our Facebook group that they were posting just kind of like about their lost years, they called it, or just the time in between they quit their professional jobs and became YouTubers or whatever. Yeah. And surprisingly, they had a long journey with Campus Crusade for Christ, or Crew, like we had, and we're basically on staff. And we've listened to the first two, and then today we listened to Rhett's deconstruction story he put out, which this was all like kind of crazy because they never ever talk about religion.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people follow them. They have like a huge influence. And I thought that it was like really bold. YouTubers. It was bold of them to like come forward and just talk about what, I don't know, just what they went through. I think like, I feel like it's similar to like everyone who's following this podcast. It's not just like you come out and you're like, hey, everybody, I'm not Christian anymore. But like just all of the years of kind of like going through all of your doubts and like figuring out what you really want to believe and just going through changes, just like a regular person. But it can feel so torturous as a Christian who's not supposed to change.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It was really cool hearing Rhett's story today, just because I feel like in his, it was like an 1.5 hour long episode or something, but in that episode, it felt like he touched on so many of the things that we've talked about throughout all the episodes of our podcast. And then obviously it really resonated with us because his time in Crew was really similar to ours and all that.
Mm-hmm. And just all of the reasons why they wanted to do it and be a part of it. And like, I don't know, a lot of his thought processes were similar to ours and like the questions that he asked. And it was a really good story. I felt like he told it well and he spoke really well on his podcast.
Yeah. It was funny because I always assumed they were Christian.
Yeah, so did I.
Like, they never talk about it on their videos, but their videos are all really clean, especially the earlier ones. Like, they never swear in their videos, and they don't really have, like, adult topics or anything like that. So it's really clean entertainment, and they built this massive YouTube channel with millions of subscribers. I think I don't know if they're the highest, they're, like, in the top 10 for sure of the highest paid YouTubers of the entire platform. So, like, yeah, they have a really significant audience, and it seems like a big deal that they're coming out as non-Christian, or at least it seems like that's the way they're coming. Rhett was, in Rhett's episode, he was saying he basically isn't a Christian anymore. He's like maybe open to the idea of God, but he wouldn't call himself a Christian and could never bring himself to believe that again. And it's like, whoa, that's a big deal. I'm sure a lot of Christian families and young people and stuff follow Good Mythical Morning on YouTube or subscribe to them. Just because, like I said, it's all like Christian approved material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They kind of talked about how their comedy sort of developed within their Christian world and why it probably seems like that to the outside. Like they are like really clean and they seem like almost wholesome Christian humor because that's how they first, I don't know, were able to practice being a comedic act together. Yeah. You know, being like on stage at Crew events.
MC at Crew. I know.
Event. And it's funny because like knowing Crew, I can totally picture them up on stage being those guys.
I know.
Those like, MC guys.
Finding out after the fact, it's like, oh yeah, I see where all of your weird humor comes from now. Like they probably, they said that they loved doing it. They like loved MCing at Crew and running the events and all that. And that makes sense to me. It's like a real high energy role that they were filling, and it seems perfect for them.
He was saying that it's an atypical journey to begin, like you're a full-time YouTuber and you're in the entertainment world, to come from like that Christian, I don't know, lifestyle. And I wrote something about it on my Instagram yesterday after listening about how like I feel self-conscious often of like coming from the Christian world and wondering like, can everybody tell that I'm Christian? Yeah. Just like you said, we could tell that Rhett and Link were Christian.
Yeah.
You know, I feel self-conscious. I don't necessarily want people to think that I was Christian in the past. I mean, I can't help that, but it's just like, it's like my deep dark secret. Like, please don't be able to tell that I am Christian. But like, I never swear.
Yeah.
And I'm like so quiet, and I think that I come off shy.
You're really nice.
I'm nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, we had someone one time be like, hear that we had a Christian past and kind of be like, oh yeah, I kind of wondered if you were. And it like sort of made me go, oh, like in my gut, like, man, like I didn't want to hear that.
Well, and that was just a barista that told us that.
I know, he didn't even know us.
You didn't even know us.
So I was putting off strong religious vibes.
Yeah, like 3 months ago.
Yeah, so I liked hearing that, like, just kind of like someone else talking about like developing themselves, but they're developing inside like a Christian world, and where you learn a lot of good skills, how to be kind, like how to be helpful,
for sure,
all like really good things. So that, I think that's great. I just don't want to be like seen as like shy, quiet girl.
Yeah.
Which
you don't want to be
know.
Seen as like meek.
Maybe that's
meek Christian
how I am
girl.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rhett said a few things in his episode about his deconstruction story that like stuck out to me. And one was that he felt like he mainly had a positive effect from his involvement in church and in Christianity, which I thought was interesting. And actually, honestly, when you've said that, in the back of my mind, there was a voice that's like, oh, he doesn't know yet. Like, he's going to uncover some stuff. But that, I feel like in hindsight, that's arrogant. You know, everybody has their own story, and that might be true, that he's totally benefited by it. Even if it is hard to imagine that that's true. Yeah, everybody has their own journey, and it's like, it was a good reminder of that like we are all going through kind of a similar process, but we're all affected in different ways, and some of us affected much more negatively and others affected positively, and it's like all good. We're all just trying to find our way in the world, and we should have space for that. I
like what he said about how he kind of had like a good time because he was a white male in the church, and he like addressed a lot of like how it was so much harder for women or the LGBTQ people. Like, if you don't fit the mold, like, it's way harder for you.
Yeah.
And like, he was saying that even some progressive churches in California, like, if you're like a woman, or like if you mention that you're gay, like, you might not be able to speak or like teach in the church. And like, it's like thinking about what year it is, like 2020 and all of that, and just, I don't know, I think that's still like some of the biggest like damaging things about the church is just like, you know, lifestyle, or like accepting people as equals and all of that.
Right. And the other thing that I felt like stuck out to me was that he said when he left, they lived in North Carolina, right? And they went to California to kind of start their YouTube career. And he was saying that he got some feedback that people were thinking like, oh, you guys just left and went to California and suddenly you're not Christians anymore, and like became liberal and your faith fell apart and you lost your like good Christian values. And that, we've talked about it before, but I resonated with that a lot too, because like when we first left Wisconsin and we were coming to Portland, my grandpa literally was like, oh, there's a lot of liberals out there, huh? Like, you better be careful.
Yeah, be
like,
careful.
Get you. And for us, like, we moved out here, and then soon after our faith like completely fell apart. But on the podcast, Rhett said something interesting, that if you move out of your like small town, little faith-based bubble that you grew up in, where you're surrounded by your faith community, and you go to a new, like, liberal, open-minded place like LA, or like, you know, any major city, I guess, it becomes really hard to maintain your same, like, small kind of close-minded faith. Like, so for us, I mean, we had particular views about gay people and about marriage and about all kinds of different stuff. And when we moved to Portland and we started seeing that there are other people living out here who aren't Christian, but who like also aren't evil, you know, they're actually like good and really loving. And that we met gay people who are amazing. And they obviously had like a really genuine love for each other. Go figure. Yeah. You know, you start to see those things, and it becomes really hard to kind of hang on to that like closed-minded dogmatic faith that you grew up with. And so it sounded like Rhett experienced that, and it made him kind of question his faith even more. And then it led him down a path of deconstruction.
I feel, meeting other people who are living a different lifestyle than you, like any kind, like even a different religion or whatever, it just really like throws a wrench into the works. Like, you're kind of like, I thought this was the best way.
Yeah. Well, like we've talked about, there's like, we always felt like everybody who wasn't a Christian was evil. I mean, everyone told us like, yeah, the world is evil. Everyone's bad. And Rhett mentioned it on the podcast that they got to LA and they met all these different people, many of whom aren't Christian and who've never been Christian, and they were great and they're loving and all that. And so it's like, it seems silly saying it now, but like, it's a shock when you meet non-Christians who aren't evil. It's like, wait a second, I was wrong.
It does seem silly saying it now because I feel like that it seems so long ago that we felt that way. But like coming to terms with that and actually realizing, oh, duh, of course, that are good people who aren't religious is like, I don't know. It's such a big moment as well. Like such a good
that realization.
Yeah, that realization.
For sure.
But like it's when you come to it, it's almost like a slap in the face. Like, of course, like I'm an idiot. Yeah. Like why did I think this?
How could I have been so close-minded?
Yeah,
for sure.
But I feel like it's important.
Yeah. But anyways, the podcast is really good. I'll link it in the description for this episode because I feel like it's definitely worth listening to.
Especially Rhett's deconstruction story.
Yeah, that one was really good. I feel like the first two, especially if you're not into Rhett and Link already, the first two are going to be kind of boring for you. But his deconstruction story was really spot on and it resonated with us a lot. And if you resonate with our story, I'm sure you will with his as well. And then Link's is coming next week or something, right?
When this podcast goes up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, so this week we got to talking, and I hope you guys all know that we try to have our podcast be very conversational. I will think of a topic that I want to talk to Joe about, and I just like, hey, like think about this for like a second, and then like let's save it. Don't talk about it at all until our podcast, because I want it to sound as though we are just having a conversation right on the spot, so that it sounds really natural. Because
we're not actors,
and hopefully it doesn't sound like we just talk for a half an hour, like out of our butts, but whatever.
Or maybe it does. And if you like that, then great.
But this week I had this thought like of a kind of a tough thing that you have to go through when you're deciding if you want to leave religion, is just going through like your own, I guess, the feelings of inferiority. Like, are you smart enough to leave? Yeah. I was thinking about, I wonder how many people don't feel that they're like smart enough, intelligent enough, or like they have the right to leave because they don't feel that they're like, I don't know, what's the opposite of they feel inferior, you know?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about, what if somebody like keeping them from leaving is, I'm never going to be able to understand how the world works outside. Like, I don't understand evolution. I don't understand science because my religion taught me to not trust it. So like, how can I ever look into it to see if there is actual evidence to go?
Yeah.
Or like, I don't understand these, theology people who are talking about the evidence for the Bible, and they're talking about like, oh, this happened in the Old Testament and this is what it means, or like this translation means this, and I can understand the Hebrew here and the Greek here. And what if they just like don't feel that they really understand that well enough, and so they feel like inferior, like their own intellect is not worthwhile, like they don't even trust themselves to like go.
That's an interesting thought, actually, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about last week, like when you first start having doubts, because I think that for a lot of Christians, and us included when we were Christian, like as we moved closer to the point when we began our deconstruction, like while we were still Christian and these doubts were starting to pop up, I was like reading more intellectual Christian material for the first time. Like most of my Christian life, I wasn't really interested in reading like what Christians had to say about apologetics. Like I didn't really care about the evolution versus creationism argument, because my whole life I had always felt that there's all these Christian forefathers who've thought through all this stuff and like who've written books about it, and I'm sure that they've done enough. And I'm just gonna,
you trust them.
Yeah. And like for most of my Christian life, I just kind of trusted like the Christian people who went before me, that they've kind of thought through and figured this stuff out and like written books about it and came to conclusions that made sense. And so like, I never really bothered or cared to look into it or understand all the arguments for myself, because I kind of just trusted them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And until I started actually having some questions about it for myself. And then at which point I started, trying to understand it. But I could imagine that a lot of people are sort of stuck in that pattern where like doubts will come up about stuff and they'll quickly squash them, not because they've gone and researched it and like gotten an answer for themselves, but because they've heard like, oh, this other guy has talked about it, or like, oh, C.S. Lewis actually talks about that in this book. And there's an answer for that. And then you're like, okay, well, I don't even like really need to know what the answer is. I need to know that I'm good.
It's like reading a headline in the news and then going to tell all your friends that you know what it's about when you didn't even read the article.
Yeah, because it'll just like allay that doubt a little bit. If you think like C.S. Lewis wrote about this, it's fine. Then you're like, okay, well, I guess I don't really have to worry about that issue anymore because like this guy who's much smarter than I ever will be, he's already thought about it. So that's fine.
It's funny because there are people who are considered intellectuals within the Christian community, but also like the Bible tells you, like that God's thoughts are higher than your thoughts and that he will just destroy the wisdom of the wise. And so it's funny because, you kind of think as like just as an individual, like, yeah, I don't need to be smart. Like God, he's smarter than me. He has it taken care of. And also like the world's intelligence has nothing on God, and it's actually like just messed up, but then we do have these people we consider to be like we lifted up in the way of like intelligence, these people are the intelligent Christians, and sort of like we just let them in a way do their job. Like that's how I felt, like they've done their job, they figured it out for me. I can't really understand, and turns out the reason I couldn't understand is because I think their arguments are bad. But like, but first time reading through apologetics books, it's kind of like, maybe I'm just not like that smart. Maybe I don't get it. Yeah. Or whatever. Yeah. But I think then like on the flip side, if you're the type of person who's maybe going through doubts and you want to start to look into science and evolution and all of that, it can be very overwhelming. Oh, for sure. And Rhett made me think of it because he talks about chromosomes for a little bit there, and it was really interesting. but I never was interested in science, maybe because we grew up Christian and we're told that science wasn't that valuable. But like now I really am, but I just don't know where to start. Yeah. And I mean there have been things that I've learned since then, like a lot of things, but it's very overwhelming to come out of Christianity and feel that, wow, like not everybody was a young earth creationist, like their whole life. Like, are you telling me that's just actually a smaller like sect of people in the whole world than I thought? Yeah. I thought it was everyone too. Yeah. And so like to come out and be like, I don't even know where to start. Like I understand like evolution, but like show me all the things about it. And, show me all of the other things about like our bodies and about our chromosomes and about our DNA and about like transitional species and like, or show me stuff about the universe. I don't know anything about space or like everything, Right. And we were lucky enough to have friends that are kind of interested in talking about that sort of thing. So like we did like have open conversations about that, but like it's a huge overwhelming topic if you were sort of closing your mind off to science your whole entire life. Yeah. Like starting now as an adult, like, I don't know, it's just hard to learn, like, and know where to begin. And I think that, like, if you felt that way, you were like, you could say to yourself, maybe I should just stay Christian. It's just easier. I don't have to figure out how all of that works. You know? Well, and the thing is that you feel like, at least I felt like I kind of did have to figure out science before I could even make a decision whether or not to leave. Yes, that's what I'm glad you remembered that, because I was thinking about that earlier this week. Because it's not like when you get to the deciding point on whether or not you're going to be Christian, you feel like, okay, I have a perfect understanding of Christianity and I have a perfect understanding of science, and now I can just choose which one I want. It's not that way at all. It's so easy to get in, but like so difficult to get out. Like you're trapped. Like you don't. Totally. Yeah. So I'm really curious, and I'd love to hear from you who are listening if this resonates with you guys at all. But did you feel like before you could decide not to be a Christian anymore, like you needed to do kind of your homework, like go and figure out
how the world, like what's the alternative, you know?
Yeah, like, because you need to like freaking debate all your family.
Yeah.
After, I mean, you don't need to, but that's like a feeling.
No, it feels like that. I felt like that.
I better have some good reasons.
I felt like I had to research like crazy and like make sure I was on top of my stuff and like knew exactly what was what and had answers for every single thing, because I knew that like the Christians did, or they thought they did, at least, you know. But it's strange because it feels like the Christianity side of things is such a closed, tidied up little box of answers and stuff like that. And like we've said before, when you leave Christianity, you're kind of just like stepping into this weird unknown void where there's ideas and like science has some stuff figured out, but there's like a lot of unknowns. Yeah. So I could imagine that a lot of people would not feel happy in Christianity and would maybe have problems with some of the stuff the Bible says, and like problems with women not being able to teach, and, you know, all of this, the stuff that we have problems with, but are so like turned away by the insane amount of stuff that they don't know on the other side of Christianity, that they just, like you said, would stay in Christianity because it's comfortable and it's easy and they understand it. Yeah. So if you're listening and that resonates with you, I'd love to hear like what that's like. Cause it's been a while since we left, and I could see how that would be a huge block for somebody who feels really unhappy in the Christian faith, but also like doesn't feel equipped to leave, I guess.
I think too, because of like how it is like in the atheism world, there's so many debates, and like they're always debating Christians, and anytime Christians have an interaction with an atheist, they're debating, and you feel like you have to know that stuff, like that other person in order to qualify, like you're leaving, you have to be like, oh, I know all of these things and I can like debate my dad now. And I always, you know, if I was a more developed person back then, I would realize that I don't need any reasons to just follow my instinct. Right. But I wasn't, and I thought, and I was scared. I mean, and that's fair. Like, our whole life we believed this thing, like, and it's pretty big deal. And so, like, having reasons to get out seems like, yeah, everybody's going to try to find their reasons. Yeah. But I always think about, like, debates, like, it doesn't matter who's right or what the truth actually is. It's down to who's a better debater. Yeah. You know, like, who is better at arguing the case. And I'm not that great of a debater, so I don't know if it even matters if I ever really learn, like, all of the reasons, because it's not like I'm going to go to my dad and just, like, start, like, debating him, and he's going to be like, wow, you win that debate, and I'm going to stop being Christian now. Like, now. So I feel like having, like, intellect or whatever, in order to appease someone else, like, I mean, even yourself, isn't really, like, that important. At the end of the day, you just kind of have to follow your instinct. Yeah. Because there's always going to be something you don't know. And it would suck if you knew everything anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So it's, like, good that we have more things to learn. Right. I guess.
Isn't it weird, though, how I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking about how Christianity, at least how we experienced it, like, first shuts down your intuition, teaches you don't trust your own intuition, lean not on your own understanding. So at that point, you're like, okay, I may have feelings about this, things might feel uncomfortable or whatever, but I'm specifically told not to trust that. So you're like disconnected from your intellect. So when you start having issues with Christianity and you have problems with whatever is causing you to feel uncomfortable in your Christianity, you are so disconnected from your instinct and from your intuition and from your own feelings and your, like, gut feelings about stuff, that you don't feel like you can use that to leave. You know what I mean? It feels like that's not enough. Like, even if you, if you're like, oh, there's something feels really weird about Christianity and it doesn't feel right to me. When I was a Christian, that would not have been a good enough reason to get out. Like, that would have been pointless. Like, let's just throw that out the window. Those are just feelings. Feelings don't really matter, you know? And I think that's probably why a lot of people feel like, okay, I need to, like, kind of build my intellectual case against Christianity in this, like, thorough, almost academic way.
Of course.
I mean, we see a lot of you who are in the Facebook group and following us on Instagram and stuff. Like, you guys read books like crazy and listen to tons of podcasts about this. And we did the same thing. We're, like, obsessed with it for a while, like, just trying to build as much of a case. I felt like I was trying to build as much of a case as I could against the Christianity of my past. in order to satisfy, I don't know, satisfy some kind of intellectual, like, empty hole I had, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But at this point now, I'm kind of thinking back to the time when I started to have some gut feelings about like, ooh, this doesn't feel right, or maybe there's some problems here, that like, that's enough in itself,
Mm-hmm.
you know? At this point in my life, like if I'm doing something or I'm a part of something that is constantly making me like question myself and have these gut feelings that are like, oh, this just like something doesn't feel right about this, I feel like I would leave first. And then if I want to, go back and like figure it out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, of course we can say that now, but I feel like if we went back, we would do the same thing.
Of course.
You
Yeah.
have to, I mean, you need your reasons, right? Like,
Yeah.
you need to like build like so many lists. I was just thinking about it too, and like going through all of that and learning is a really big part of the healing process. Even though it's like super daunting and overwhelming and can like prevent you from really searching, it like once you start doing that, I remember feeling like everything that I read and found, even though it was like step by step, piece by piece, was so healing.
Mm-hmm. It really was.
To me.
Yeah. It felt like so good and so validating every time we'd find a piece that like makes so much more sense on the other side of Christianity. Yeah, it's just interesting. I've been thinking about how it like just feels like that shouldn't be necessary almost, you know, and that if you have a problem with Christianity, that you should be able to just be like, oh, so this doesn't feel right. It's just not for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the thing that comes along with that is like the fear of hell. And I mean, you guys know.
Yeah, so many consequences.
Yeah.
Another way that I think someone can feel inferior is if they came to faith later in life or joined a family who was more religious than them, and so like because of that became more religious.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I was thinking about this situation, like what if somebody came to faith later in life, or like had like a sibling that like really got them into it later, or like married into a family that was really religious and they never were, but they were like, oh, I do see the merit in it. I feel like that person might feel inferior, like with, or like not able to speak their mind and leave because it wasn't really theirs in the first place.
Yeah.
And they didn't really like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't exactly know how to say it,
No,
but
I know
like
what you mean.
they didn't really, you know, grow up in it. So they might feel like, well, I didn't, you know, maybe it's because I didn't grow up in it and I don't really understand it, or like fully. And so I'm not able to like intellectualize my way out of it.
Exactly.
You know, like
Yeah.
because maybe my family like I didn't have that support system around me my whole life. Like I didn't really like see what they see.
Yeah.
You know, and I haven't been a Christian that long. So like maybe it's just like a test for me, like, you know, because I've only been here like in this place like a couple years.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think like that could be really hard on someone who, yeah, is like a newer Christian who's having those, because I think like when a newer Christian does have those, like it probably is really common, and it's like, okay, yeah, like you're just going to have those. You have to get through that
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be fine, like smooth sailing after that, you know?
Yeah.
But I bet like if you weren't in it that long, you probably do have that kind of sense of like, I don't really know. Like, I guess I'm not really that experienced in it. So that's why like
Yeah.
I'm feeling doubtful, you know, but that's scary because that's like completely not true. Like you could just be having like instincts that's not right for you, even
Right.
if you are new in it.
Yeah. And the problem is that by ignoring those instincts over and over again, you're going to like
Just train your
instinct
body
away.
Yeah.
You know, just like we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can totally see that happening. If everybody in the family you married into or whatever is way more religious than you, and you kind of started becoming more religious because of them, like, how dare you be the one to speak
Yeah.
out and be like, this isn't right.
Yes.
Like, you don't know. Everyone else has been a Christian for longer than that.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
your internal monologue.
That's what my internal monologue
Yeah.
would be saying in that
Mhm.
situation. And I can totally see how that would cause someone to just kind of keep squashing their instinct down and thinking to themselves, oh, these other people have just been Christian longer, so they probably understand it better. And I'm just like not intellectual enough or not smart enough or not developed enough to understand why these issues I'm having actually aren't issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's bizarre. It's a bizarre trap.
Yeah, I think it's just an interesting concept to think about. What are the blocks that you can have that could be keeping you from really looking at where you are in life? And I mean, I think that there's like tons when you're a part of a really strong religious organization or like ideology, like there's tons of blocks, but I never like really considered somebody feeling like they're not smart enough to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a weird trap to be in.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel I'm smart enough to figure this out and go and have my reasons set. Like, you should never feel like you have to be, like, quote, smart enough to do something.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah. What kind of religion is that where you, like, have to be a certain level of, like, intellectual prowess to be able to understand the religion enough to decide whether or not you can leave it?
Exactly.
Like, that seems crazy, you know?
You get let in, you don't need to know anything.
You don't need to know anything.
And actually,
to start.
if you're dumb, I mean, I'm saying that in, like, quotes, like, dumb, like, as in, like, you're just, like, baseline child, like, faith, you know what I mean? That's better for you.
Yeah.
In the religion. Like,
Yeah.
if you, like, keep quiet.
You don't need to know anything to get into it. All you need to know is that you're bad and that without this new religion, you're going to be, like, really screwed later on. So, yeah, everyone's like, sure, sign me up.
I always think back to, like, evangelizing and thinking, like, why did nobody, like, ask us to explain it a little bit more?
I know.
I think it's such a, like, I feel like, especially in the Midwest and stuff where we were, like, religion is so common that, like, everybody's kind of heard about it and, like, nobody thinks to question because it's kind of just, like, in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I wish now someone would evangelize to me and I would just be like, tell me more.
Yeah,
Keep
like,
telling me more.
That? Like, explain it.
Explain. And what do you
Yeah.
mean by that? And what does that mean? And then what are the consequences of this? And, like, what benefits do you have now? And how is your life really good? Do you have any proof that you can tell me about? Like, what times have you gone through doubt? And has it always been working for you? I don't know. Just, like, I wish I could go through and ask them, like, all of the questions just out of curiosity.
Well, you could, because tomorrow those Jehovah's Witnesses are probably coming back that I accidentally invited over.
Oh, okay. We're staying at a friend's house right now, and in their neighborhood, they have, like, people who come by and, you know, like, canvas and evangelize, and we have, like, some Jehovah's Witnesses who come by. They know Joe's name. Every time it seems we are about to leave, they come by, and
They just came by once before, and
yes,
I talked to him for, like,
but of
10
course
minutes.
they wrote your name down because that's the best, even, like, evangelizing trick. Like, you meet somebody who's, like, interested enough to talk to you for 30 minutes, you're going to remember where they live and what their name is.
Yeah, how to win friends and influence people.
Yes.
101.
So they came by and they were a sweet older couple, and Joe was feeling like they were his grandparents, so he needed to talk to them. And you had a good conversation with them.
Yeah, I did actually have a decent conversation with them and was able to ask them a few things, because the first thing they said was the lady was like, haven't you noticed how, like, the world is just getting worse and worse and it's so evil? And I was like, wait a second, like, the world is better than it ever has been. There's less crime and, like, the mortality rate of children is better than it's ever been. And
Well,
everyone's
especially
healthier. Like, the
there's
world's
not, like,
getting less evil.
There's not killing, like you said, like, gladiators.
Well,
or,
yeah,
like,
so I said that. And
like, how barbaric we used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's like, well, yeah, maybe that stuff, but, like, overall it's getting more evil. And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, we used to go to coliseums and people would watch humans get, like, massacred for fun. Like, we don't do that anymore because we figured out it's immoral.
Also, it's such a vague statement. Like,
Yeah.
where are her sources and what does she mean by evil? And, like, and is the reason that it's more evil because of the religious or, like, fundamentalism that's, like, in the US? I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions, but I was able to talk to them for a few minutes, and it was kind of a weird, surreal experience talking to them because I explained that I used to be Christian and I'm not anymore. And we just, like, talked about that a little bit, but I just had this, like, real spiritual feeling experience talking to them and looking into their eyes and knowing that this older couple is out on a Saturday. It was like a rainy Saturday, and they're out walking around up and down the street in the freezing cold, and came up to the door and knocked on the door because they believe in the bottom of their heart that that's the best possible thing they can do for me and for them, I guess. I don't know the specifics of being a Jehovah's Witness, but I guess they're trying to get into that sweet, sweet 144,000.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. I part of me feels like I can't fault them. Like, they're following their passion. They're doing what they think is the most loving thing they can do on this earth while they live here. And they're, like, living with a mission and a purpose. And, like, they seem to be thriving in it, you know? On the other hand, I'm feeling like you guys are spreading, like, the worst, most damaging knowledge. This religion is, like, hurting you, and it's hurting anybody who you're convincing to join it. You should not go to anyone's door. So yeah, it was bizarre talking to them.
What else did you ask them? Do you remember?
So I found out that these guys don't believe in hell, which I thought was interesting, because I was saying, when he asked why I wasn't Christian anymore, I was like, well, that's a really big and long question to answer. But probably the biggest thing is I have a problem with loving, quote unquote, loving God creating a place of eternal torment for like 90% of humankind. And they're like, oh, well, we don't actually think hell exists. Hell to them is just like non-existence. You just like die and become nothing. So I didn't say this, but in my mind, I was like, okay, well then what's the point of your religion? Like, who cares? I don't care if I die and become nothing. That sounds fine. Like that sounds neutral, if anything. Yeah, I don't remember the other stuff we talked about, but we had a few back and forth questions, and it was like a decent conversation, and I actually wouldn't mind talking to them about it more. But like, it's hard to kind of like challenge them on their faith when I'm looking at their like sweet old eyes and know that they're like, they believe they're doing this loving, beautiful thing. So it's weird. I don't really know.
Yeah, like completely disagreeing with them, but like also like knowing that they're just like human. Yeah,
because part of me wants to like debate them or like kind of fight them, because I feel like you guys are so illogical. I can totally convince you to not be Christian, which probably isn't true, but you know, I feel that way as like someone who's read a lot about this stuff. But yeah, on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know, you guys seem really happy and like you're thriving doing this, and I know what you're feeling right now.
Yeah,
and
because
like,
we felt that way as well.
Yeah, so I have compassion for them and can understand where they're coming from.
And guess what I was doing that whole time? I was compulsively cleaning, walking around, trying not to listen, and shaking. with adrenaline, not with fear. Because I was like, I need to not go out there because I don't have any problem fighting old people, because I don't have a good relationship with my grandparents, so I don't feel that compassion for older people.
I need to hold you back.
And then the next time they came to the door, we were about to leave as well, and so we couldn't talk, but Joe was wearing no high, like the most high our shirt that we made a picture of Jesus that I drew smoking a joint. And he came back from the door, and I was like, were you just wearing that shirt talking to them? I wondered if they saw.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But then I accidentally invited him back this Saturday because I'm nice and don't know how to think on my feet in those situations. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if they come back, see if we're in the mood to talk to them or not. But yeah.
Every single week I think of a different nuanced thing that is a part of this journey. You know, that's like very specific to this.
Yeah, right.
And I could talk about it for like hours.
Right.
And, but I think that's fun. That's great.
Yeah. Let us know if you guys have experienced that kind of feeling of block when you're trying to leave Christianity, but you felt like you weren't intellectual enough, or maybe like it wasn't your place to question your faith, or anything that we spoke about earlier. I'd love to hear your insight and your perspective on that.
And let us know if you know any good resources for getting over that overwhelm, or like anything about science or any kind of things that like help
bridge that gap.
Yeah, help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're like a scientist or you teach evolution at a college, reach out to us.
For real. We would love to have someone who could teach us all like the fundamentals of evolution, because I, for one, never really learned it. And
I think I plugged my ears in school.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for listening this week, and we'll catch you next time.